There was a time when bookstores weren't just shops. They were landmarks of culture and memory. Walk into any shopping mall or busy downtown in the 1980s or 1990s, and you'd likely see glowing signs or chains that promised endless aisles of stories, magazines, and music. Families made weekend trips. Students browsed shelves for textbooks, and readers discovered new authors by chance. Today, most of those bookstores have disappeared, victims of online giants and changing habits. In this video, we'll revisit 10 bookstore chains that once defined America's reading life. 1. Waldenbooks. For anyone who grew up in the 1980s or 1990s, Waldenbooks was impossible to miss. With locations in nearly every shopping mall across America, it became the go-to stop for readers of all ages. The stores were small but packed tightly with paperbacks, magazines, and bestsellers stacked to the ceiling. Waldenbooks gave countless people their first taste of book browsing independence, whether it was grabbing a fantasy novel, a romance paperback, or the latest thriller. At its peak, there were over 1,000 stores nationwide. But with the rise of Barnes and Noble superstores and online competition, Waldenbooks slowly disappeared. 2. B. Dalton Bookseller. B. Dalton Bookseller was another powerhouse of mall culture. Founded in the late 1960s, it quickly grew into one of the largest bookstore chains in America, often found just a few doors away from Waldenbooks. The stores carried a wide selection of bestsellers, classics, and magazines, making them a familiar stop for casual readers and students alike. At its peak, B. Dalton operated hundreds of stores nationwide and became a household name. However, the chain struggled as shopping malls declined and larger superstores offered deeper selections. Eventually, its parent company phased out B. Dalton, closing stores and leaving behind fond memories. 3. Crown Books. Crown Books took a very different approach from its competitors by focusing heavily on discounts. With the slogan, "If you paid full price, you didn't buy it at Crown," the chain made a name for itself in the 1980s and 1990s. Customers loved the bargain bins filled with bestsellers at prices far lower than rivals, making it a haven for budget-conscious readers. Crown Books expanded rapidly, with stores popping up in malls and shopping plazas across the country. But the aggressive discount model proved difficult to sustain long-term. Combined with management troubles and competition from larger retailers, Crown Books eventually collapsed. 4. Borders. Borders was once seen as the future of bookstores. Founded in 1971, it grew into a national giant with massive superstores that offered more than just books. Shoppers could browse magazines, CDs, DVDs, and even grab a coffee while flipping through pages in its inviting spaces. Borders became a weekend destination for many families and students during the 1990s and early 2000s. But when ebooks and online shopping surged, Borders made critical missteps, investing heavily in CDs and outsourcing its online store to Amazon. By 2011, the beloved chain declared bankruptcy, closing hundreds of stores and marking the end of an era. 5. Brentano's. Brentano's was one of the most elegant and prestigious bookstore chains in America. Founded in the late 1800s, it started as a small shop in New York City before expanding across the country and even internationally. Unlike discount-driven stores, Brentano's catered to readers looking for a more refined experience, with upscale interiors and carefully curated selections of literature, art books, and foreign titles. For decades, it was considered a cultural landmark, especially in major cities. But shifting ownership, rising costs, and fierce competition from bigger retail chains eroded its influence. By the late 20th century, Brentano's had largely disappeared. 6. Bookland. Bookland was a regional favorite that thrived in the South and Midwest, bringing books to smaller towns where bigger chains didn't always reach. Known for its modest store size and friendly atmosphere, Bookland often served as the primary bookstore in many communities. It carried everything from popular bestsellers to local interest titles, giving readers a convenient option close to home. At its peak, the chain operated hundreds of stores, often in strip malls or small shopping centers. But as national chains expanded and online retailers gained dominance, Bookland couldn't compete. Many locations either closed or were absorbed into larger companies. 7. Dalton's Jr./Kohl's. Not every bookstore chain was massive, but smaller brands like Dalton's Jr. and Kohl's carved out their own place in retail history. Dalton's Jr. targeted young readers, filling shelves with children's books, comics, and early learning titles that made it a favorite stop for families. Meanwhile, Kohl's, a Canadian chain, expanded into U.S. malls for a period, offering compact stores with a reliable mix of bestsellers and classics. Both chains played important roles in shaping mall culture by making books more accessible to casual shoppers. Over time, however, larger superstores and e-commerce left little room for these smaller players. 8. Doubleday Bookshops. Doubleday wasn't just a publisher. It also ran its own chain of bookstores across the United States. Starting in the early 20th century, these shops were often located in urban centers and airports, making them convenient for travelers and city readers alike. The stores carried a wide selection of Doubleday titles, but also offered popular books from other publishers, giving them a well-rounded catalog. For decades, the name carried prestige and familiarity, symbolizing both literature and accessibility. However, as retail dynamics shifted and larger bookstore chains dominated the market, Doubleday Bookshops gradually disappeared, leaving behind only its publishing legacy. 9. Encore Books. Encore Books built its reputation on affordability, attracting readers with bargain prices and discount bins filled with paperbacks. During the 1980s and 1990s, it became a familiar sight in shopping centers and smaller malls, especially for customers who wanted quick, low-cost access to popular titles. Many people remember browsing through piles of discounted novels and grabbing unexpected finds at Encore. But the same discount-first model that made it popular also made survival difficult once larger competitors entered the scene. Coupled with the rise of online retailers offering even deeper discounts, Encore Books eventually faded away, leaving behind only nostalgia. 10. Dalton/Border spin-offs and local chains. Beyond the national giants, there were dozens of smaller regional chains and spin-offs tied to be Dalton and Borders. Some operated under slightly different names in local markets, while others were absorbed into the larger parent brands before quietly vanishing. These stores often had strong community ties, serving as neighborhood gathering spots where customers knew the staff by name. But when the bigger chains collapsed, these smaller branches and affiliates went down with them. The loss wasn't just about business. It erased local culture and the sense of discovery that came with having a nearby bookstore within walking or driving distance. Bookstores were never just about selling pages bound in covers. They were about the experience of discovery. Chains like Waldenbooks, B, Dalton, and Borders gave readers a place to wander, explore, and stumble across stories that shaped their lives. While these once thriving names have vanished from malls and main streets, their legacy remains in the memories of those who spent hours inside them. Today, with most book shopping happening online, remembering these lost giants reminds us of the joy and community that bookstores once brought to everyday life.